The new year started with a bang as New York City got an unapologetic Democratic socialist as mayor. That's not the only thing that will make 2026 memorable. Governor Kathy Hochul is up for re-election, so everything she does will be under the microscope. The Point starts right now. We're going to chew the fat about all things political with J.C. Polanco, a law professor at the University of Mount St. Vincent, and Jeff Colton, editor-in-chief of City and State New York. And that's a new position for you. We want to congratulate you.
Thank you. It's a good start to the year.
So, okay, guys, we have a new mayor. He gave an inauguration speech. What's your take?
Look, I think he was exciting yesterday. A lot of people were hopeful. They were there for hours, including yourself, Marcia.
Yes, I was freezing for hours.
I know, and he delivered a speech that was quintessential New York, but, you know, like the ideologue that he is, he gave you some of that socialist tinge that so many of us were concerned about, and I think it became the talk of the town, especially for those of us who did not support the mayor. We are concerned about some of the things we heard regarding collectivism and socialism, and, you know, we're thinking about what does the future hold, but it was definitely hopeful. He gave shout-outs to everyone. And it was as New York as you can be, with some concern.
That's right. It was a very unifying message. You know, he got a lot of pushback on election night in November for kind of a defiant message. You know, it was the Donald Trump, I hope you're, turn the volume up, I'm sure you're listening. And we know he was listening. There was no mention of Donald Trump yesterday.
Kathy Hochul.
Or Kathy Hochul. It was very much just a unifying, I am the mayor of all New Yorkers, very positive speech in that way. And again, he did say, like, I am a democratic socialist. I'm going to govern as a democratic socialist, which was notable because there's certainly been maybe a sidelining of that since the primary. You know, he was running as more of a leftist in the primary, and he was really working to make peace with business before the general election.
So how do you think business reacts to him saying that, given the fact that the war cry, if you will, of the speech and of both AOC and Bernie Sanders was tax the rich?
Yeah, I mean, it was a unifying speech, except the billionaires and the oligarchs. Those are the two categories that he specifically said, we are coming after you, the billionaires and the oligarchs. So it wasn't completely unifying. It was I guess, unifying New York against those, against that. And I will say that I think those billionaires, those oligarchs, they do understand the difference between a rhetoric and a speech and what he's actually going to do as mayor, and time will tell for that.
Look, the truth is that it wasn't just the oligarchs and the billionaires. When they say tax the rich, we're talking about 46% of the entire city budget is paid for by the top 1%.
Right.
That's huge. And then when you take a look at the top 2%, now we're approaching the 60% marker. So when you are the new mayor and you had about 50% of the city voted against you, you're not exactly a mandate. Why don't you try to unify the city? So I'm very concerned when I hear the talk about collectivism and some of that, I'm going to govern as a democratic socialist, because guess what? If you are wealthy, you can easily leave the city. And at the end of the day, your social programs cost $15 billion for universal health care, $1 billion for free buses. Somebody's going to pay the bill. And if they leave, it's going to be us. And that's going to be a problem. So there were a lot of us who are centrist independents who did not support this mayor, who heard all of that yesterday and were very concerned about what is the direction of this government, really.
Well, how do you feel, Jeff? I mean, you have a situation where I know your numbers are right, because I'm aware of them, I've studied them, and it's true. So if you have 46% of your budget is paid by the top 1% of your earners, and they're mobile, is that a smart thing to say, I'm going after you?
You know, he did that peacemaking tour this past summer. He was meeting with JP Morgan and all the other CEOs, right, and the Partnership for New York City. And the message there was basically like, look, like, I am a democratic socialist. I want to tax you, but don't worry. Like, I'm still going to run the city like it's not going to be a revolution, basically. You know, he's not using that revolutionary language. He's using, you know, terms about we're going to run the city better. It's going to be big government. But like the government is still going to be the same. And the clearest example of that is the people that he is appointing, many of which are veterans of city government, particularly the de Blasio administration. But we're also seeing some Adams holdovers, and we're seeing some folks from the Bloomberg administration, like the new DOT commissioner he just appointed. And so, again, I think that there is certainly a concern from the wealthy, from many of the wealthy in New York City. But there's a difference between the rhetoric and then what he's actually going to do. And what they're seeing, I think there's kind of a wait and see approach. I think there's a feeling that he is not going to have this revolution that some fear.
I don't know. I think it was very clear, Jeff, yesterday that it's not going to be politics as usual. He said it. And then he talked about the warmth of collectivism. What in the Marxism is that, right? And pushing up against the individualism. I mean, we are a capitalist city. We are the capitalist city, and we are the economic engine of the planet. When you have the CEO of the New York City government telling you that he wants to embrace collectivism, it gives me heartburn because it sounds too much like socialism. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur in New York City and you hear this kind of language, and then he goes on national media and says billionaires shouldn't exist, you know, it sends the wrong message, especially when you are, in fact, the CEO of New York City.
So one of the things that struck me, having had to sit there through the cold and it was 12 degrees, I'm sorry to complain, but he talked about 3 mayors who had tried to make things better for the working people. He talked about Fiorello LaGuardia, who I guess he thought was successful because he's regarded him as his mentor. And then he talked about David Dinkins and Bill de Blasio, who were not so successful. And he actually said in his speech, some were more successful than others. His words, not mine. So what do you take from that, that he basically was holding those 3 people up as his idols, since 2 of the 3 truly weren't very successful?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they were progressives. You know, some still call Mayor...
Well, Dinkins was a member of the Democratic Socialists of America.
He was. And I think that when you're thinking about progressive mayors, you have to give credit to Mayor Dinkins and de Blasio. There's just no other way around it. He's been very clear about it. And I think he wants to tell the city, you've had progressive socialist guys before. I'm of that ilk. So give me a shot.
Wait a second. When you think about David Dinkins, you think about his major accomplishments. One of his accomplishments was building the tennis center in Forest Hills. And he also did a whole bunch of things in terms of, at the end, because violence was rising, he's the one that did the personal income tax surcharge so that you could hire more cops. He never got to hire them because by the time the money came in, Giuliani got to hire him, but he did that. So those are his 2 things. And as for de Blasio, his major accomplishment, a very progressive idea, which everybody's wanting to copy, was, pre-K.
Yep.
But other than that, name some big accomplishments, and why would you want to have them as your
I think one reason that he looks up to Dinkins is that mass politics that Dinkins represented. Dinkins had the most primary votes, if I recall, since Mamdani. I mean, tons of people came out because it was a historic election, first black mayor of New York City. Mamdani, again, historic election, first Muslim mayor of New York City, brought out a new record since, I think it was 1969, the most votes. So he's looking at that collective kind of politics. There's also the connection. I mean, you mentioned the tennis center. Mamdani's been clear. He wants to be a big events guy. He wants to, go really big into the World Cup. He did that citywide scavenger hunt. He organized a soccer tournament. This is a guy that will...
creative.
Exactly. Yeah. He's going to follow Dinkins in that way. And I see it, of course, also a recognition of the city's black political power and establishment, something that he, frankly, needs to give respect to and work with because they were not with him at the beginning.
Right. And what is Mayor Mamdani to do other than to name check those mayors? What is he going to say? The 3 terms of Michael Bloomberg? The 2 successful terms of Mayor Giuliani? Where do you go with that? Mayor Koch? What do you say? Obviously, those are the 3 guys that you're going to mention. So, I mean, it was low-hanging fruit for the mayor to name check those 3 guys.
And LaGuardia is funny because, I mean, that was so long ago that now every mayor says they love LaGuardia.
Nobody even knows what LaGuardia did.
Exactly. I mean, on the debate stage, every single one was like, who's your favorite mayor? It was LaGuardia, LaGuardia, LaGuardia. It's like Abraham Lincoln in the presidency. Everybody just has to respect Lincoln, no matter what party he was a part of. It's like, yeah, LaGuardia is on the Mount Rushmore of New York City mayors.
Well, I do have to ask you one question, though, because after he was elected, he caused somewhat of a stir by the executive orders that he signed, including one which eliminated all the executive orders that were signed after September 26, 2024, which was the day that Mayor Adams was indicted. And some of those had to do with peeling back rights of people who were Jewish. I wonder your reaction to that.
Look, it's not new to have an executive go out there and issue new executive orders. We saw President Trump do his share of executive orders his first day in office. We were expecting that. The fact that he did a complete reversal on all of the executive orders from the moment of the indictment moving forward. He says in the press release that he did it to turn a new leaf, to start from the beginning. But quite frankly, this is the problem when you do blanket executive orders. You're going to miss a couple. And those that you mentioned really impacted the Jewish community. We saw a lot of backlash. And there was one major change in that he's going to leave the office opposing anti-Semitism.
He's eliminating the definition of a Holocaust, and he is peeling back the ability for New York to disinvest from Israel.
Because, I'm sorry, but the BDS thing is a big thing for his supporters. And the fact that so many are arguing that just because you're saying things that are against Israel don't exactly make them anti-Semitic, those are some of the reasons why those executive orders. But is anyone surprised? This man rose to power discussing the role of BDS and how important BDS was to him. So the fact that there's an executive order attacking and a former executive order by Mayor Adams, making sure that we never participate in BDS shouldn't be surprising to anyone.
Jeff?
I'm laughing a little bit about the reaction to this because, I mean, Eric Adams, friend of New York City's Jews, big ally to Israel, he only adopted this definition of anti-Semitism a few months ago. I mean, he was mayor for 3.5 years without having this definition of anti-Semitism. And it just seems maybe an overreaction to the idea that, oh, New York, now it's open season against Jewish New Yorkers. It's like, no, New York City was able to go and combat anti-Semitism institutionally without this. And Mamdani's been clear that he disagrees with that, with the core point that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. He disagrees with that, so this was his way to repeal that in an official way.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but we will be right back. We are back with J.C. Polanco and Jeff Colton, and another thing that's going to happen this year in the world of politics is that the governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul, is up for re-election. First, she has a primary, and then she's going to face, it looks like, Bruce Blakeman. So let's talk about that.
I think this primary is it's going to be very easy for Governor Hochul to win. She's very popular with the Democrats, especially after supporting Mayor Mamdani. I think she secured her left flank. And look, it's going to be tough for her lieutenant governor to take her out in a primary. I think that the real match is going to be in November between County Executive Blakeman and Governor Hochul. Her issue is going to be a very important one. How do you go and defend your decision to support Mayor Mamdani in the primary statewide? We have to remember that outside of New York City, most of New York's counties vote for the Republican candidate. And when you have a Nassau County executive that could get Democrats and independents to support him, it's going to be a very interesting November. So how does she do it is the question.
Yeah, and it's an interesting pivot for her. She was expecting Elise Stefanik to be the big opponent this entire year. And then, whoops, surprise, she's out. Now it's going to be Blakeman. The two know each other. Blakeman has been somewhat of a thorn in her side for the past 4 years, really. So, you know, it's not new. They know how to attack each other. They're going to be working on that. And it might be, I mean, it really comes down to Donald Trump, of course. He's going to be the dominant force, as always, in politics. And Blakeman has aligned himself with Trump. So much as we saw Lee Zeldin a few years ago give Hochul a real challenge, we might see the same dynamic.
Question. So Lee Zeldin, who was really not a well-known congressman from Long Island, gave Kathy Hochul a scare. He came within 6 points. Bruce Blakeman is a well-known Republican from Nassau County. He has the support in Nassau, Suffolk County, and the suburban counties in New York to the north of New York City. Is he more of a threat to her than Elise Stefanik?
If I may, I think so. And this is why. He's pro-choice. If you're a pro-choice Republican executive from the suburbs,
who's, by the way, cut taxes,
who cuts taxes, and you send that message to counties across New York that are overtaxed, and then you start focusing on the fact that Kathy Hochul supported a Democratic Socialist for CEO of New York City government, and you make Mayor Mamdani the piñata, it's a very different calculus in November for Governor Hochul, which is why I think she's going to have a harder time with County Executive Blakeman than she would have with
Right. And let me put policy aside for a minute. If we're just looking at the two, Bruce Blakeman, he's been described as straight out of central casting for a politician. He is handsome, he's experienced, he looks sharp.
He's going to love hearing that from you.
He's good on the stump, he will love it, but
He's
that's
handsome.
the fact. And a lot of people are going to be coming in to vote in November. They're not going to know so much about the policies. The idea is going to be, oh, Blakeman, he's not the incumbent. He's new, he's fresh, he's handsome. There's always the gender aspect as well. You know, Blakeman being a man, Hochul getting often undue criticism for being a woman. I think that simple fact of those two matching up has to be considered in this election.
But here's the question. The question is this: does the fact that she faces Blakeman, who cut taxes in Nassau County, make her have to think twice about the decisions she makes during this legislative session about what she gives to New York City and whether she raises taxes on who and how much? Does she have to really think about that? Because he's going to go after her.
Of course, this is the most difficult balance. She has Zohran Mamdani and a mass movement of New York lefties on her left, and then she's going to have Bruce Blakeman on her right, pushing her on the same stuff, and she's just got such a tightrope walk.
Look, I think that it'd be smart for Mayor Mamdani to tell Governor Hochul, I need universal daycare, I need a win. In my first 100 days, can you make this happen? And she's already said very clearly that she's down for universal daycare. But this is
But she wants to phase it in.
She wants to phase it in, which is, I think, the way that she's going to do it for the following year. But she's going to have New Yorkers where most of the votes are in New York. It's in New York City. She's going to want to give Mayor Mamdani something. And there's something else that I want you to consider. You have the majority of senators and assembly members that are going to go to Albany from New York City, where Mayor Mamdani did very well in November. They have to go up to Albany and fight for this. I highly doubt that you're going to have an assembly member and a senator where Mayor Mamdani did very well in their district to go to Albany and not deliver universal daycare in the first 100 days. So you talk about a tightrope, Jeff, that's a real tightrope.
Wait. Will he be satisfied with just universal daycare and not free buses and not a rent freeze?
Absolutely.
We have about a minute left.
Absolutely. He has to be satisfied with something. He needs a win. And the win that he can get right now from the governor is on universal daycare because it's popular. A phase-in. And New Yorkers want to see the effort. If Mayor Mamdani works it and Governor Hochul tries to phase it in, it's going to be seen as a win for Mayor Mamdani.
You get the last word, Jeff.
I agree. Look, the rent freeze, that's on a schedule. That's going to happen in April or it's not. Or maybe June. I don't even know the schedule. It's going to happen in June or it's not. The free buses, I think he could take some time. I think he will be happy with a deal with Hochul. It's going to work out for both of them.
You agree?
I think it will, but the $15 billion is what scares a lot of people. How do you pay for universal daycare in New York City without a means test?
Like you have to tax somebody for something.
And it's not going to be taxing me. I'll tell you this, I ain't got money for that.
All right, on that note, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation does continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.
Jets Late Night, sponsored by Kane University, tonight after CBS News New York.
Thank you for joining me. Tax the Rich seems to have replaced Old Lang Syne as the theme song for 2026. But how do New Yorkers feel about the idea of paying more? They're weighing in on your point. Do you think you should pay more taxes or less taxes?
Less taxes.
I shouldn't pay more taxes.
I want to pay less taxes.
Less taxes.
Less taxes.
Why?
Well, I'm a senior, 80 years old.
Good answer. You're 80 years old?
Yeah.
God bless you.
God bless you too.
I think we pay enough as it is.
I'm okay with what I pay because when I am jobless or have issues, I get support.
I think we need to pay as many taxes as we need to support the people in our country.
Was it a good idea to tax rich people?
Yes, of course.
It's terrible.
Yes and no.
Of course it is.
Because?
Because they can afford to help pay for the other people. We need to support our community. We need to support each other.
They can afford it. A lot of them, a lot of the superstars, billionaires. Should I call names?
I mean, there's things that the city needs, which is why they normally tax people in a certain bracket, right? But I still believe in equality.
I think there's downstream effects to a lot of these things.
Tax everybody, but yeah, to a certain degree. But not to the part where you just do it maliciously.
You have to incentivize people to work hard, employ people, build their businesses. And if you take away that incentive, it means nothing. And that's not how the city's going to survive.
Paying their fair share, like under Eisenhower, is a 90% tax rate. Better idea.
Okay. 90%.
I think under Eisenhower, I'm pretty certain the 1% were paying a lot more, so they'd invested back in their businesses.
So you think it's a good idea to tax the rich?
Yeah.
Why do you think people, whether they're rich or they're poor, they just don't want to pay any more taxes?
It's exhausting. Leaves a hole in your pocket.
Well, nobody wants to pay taxes anyway. That's just the merit. That's just anybody.
You want to keep the money that you're making.
It's their money. They're afraid to give it away. They feel they worked it for it. That's all.
It feels weird putting money into the ethersphere, into the atmosphere, and not always knowing where the money's going.
Well, nobody likes to pay taxes, but you have to. We're going to clean the street, take care of the homeless, the elderly,
So why do you think the idea of taxing the rich excites so many people?
Because they could afford it.
They feel like they've got a lot of tax breaks. They have loopholes. They're able to, work their way around a lot of things. So I think that's a big part of that.
I think they're stupid.
Okay.
I'm not excited, but it's better to the rich people pay more and the poor people.
I don't know if it necessarily excites people or if it just kind of makes individuals in certain brackets feel like, well, if you're blessed enough or lucky enough to be in a certain bracket, you should help more. I think that's kind of more where the idea stems from.
I have no idea. I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's nice for people to say they should pay more, but you have to understand the statistics. Fewer than 10% of the people are paying 80% of the taxes, and that's why I know you know.